Hello everybody, we're going to be working on our Unit 5 database assignment tonight, and that assignment will focus on these 4 SQL commands, these 4 different approaches, which is basically creating tables, inserting information into tables, updating records, and deleting those things as well. I've preemptively opened up my document here, so I have my instruction set that we're going to be following and trying to complete. And then I have my SQL Server Management Studios already launched, logged in, and ready to roll. And I want to make sure that we're also using the right database. And I don't know if you guys are reading this in the instruction or not, but so this is going to be a little bit of repeat. We need to actually create a database to do the work. And the database is called Advanced Database, and the command to create it is pretty darn simple. So this is going to be our first step. So let's go ahead and create a new query window. And the beauty of this is you already have the command to do the work. Is there anything with that command that's missing? Yeah, do you think that'll make a problem for us? Or create a problem for us? And how do you know that, Jill? You just
because in the past you said it's one command, you can't do it.
Yeah, that's exactly correct. It'll actually execute without. So what do you think my recommendation is, right? If you guys have been in my programming classes, always include it. You know, because the one time that you forget to include it is the time it comes back to bite you. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. And I'm just making sure I have it all spelled right. So we're using Advanced Database. So we're creating a database called Advanced Database. I'm going to go ahead and execute this query. And you can see I got the message back saying everything worked all right. Now, not being the paranoid sort, but maybe a little bit, I'm going to go in here and I'm going to take a look at my database listing and see that the database did indeed populate. Remember that this product can be a little quirky, so don't neglect to do a refresh on your screen in the little, Object Explorer window to make sure that it pops up. Sometimes it takes a little while. I'm not really sure what the functional difference is. I've had it just like what I did now, where it pops up immediately, and other times where it takes a while, like several refresh attempts before it appears. If you know you ran the command and it said it completed successfully, I have to trust that it's true, even if the Object Explorer isn't showing it. So always make sure that you try refresh a few times. You can even go as far as closing the product and opening it again, if that's really what it takes to make it appear. It shouldn't, but I've seen that happen. So don't get frustrated is really kind of the point. All right. So the next little tip that's given in the instruction set here, if you're reading it, says make sure you're using the advanced database you just created to complete the rest of the assignment. We ran into that last time because it doesn't know what we're using, right? Unless you designate. And just by virtue of creating a database doesn't mean we're using it. So one of the first statements we're going to put in here, and you know what, let's just be safe and we'll just put it in every one of our programs or SQL scripts that we're going to put out there, that we're using the right database. Is this the right way to say this? What's the right way to say it? Use. So why do you think I would intentionally take using? To confuse you. Oh, well, it's kind of a little acid test to see. Because right here, well, it says right here, using. So, all right, I'll type using. Right? You guys might think the same way. But the actual statement is use. So we'll just leave that at the top of all of our scripts just to make sure they operate correctly. All right, the first step is to create a new table. Now, here's how I think we should proceed. I'm actually going to pause the video, and I'm going to give you guys a few minutes to build this out, to see what you come up with, and then I'll just paste the code into the window and show you what I have as a solution and see if we're on the same page. So it's not to confuse you, it's just to make sure that you're getting the concept. We do have a table that's right in our document that tells us exactly how to set everything. So if you remember all the techniques that we were putting together last time, this is kind of a little bit of refresher of that. So let's call this 5 minutes max. Does that seem reasonable? And as far as you get in 5 minutes, so I'm looking at my clock right now, so we'll come back in 5, and for now I'm pausing the video. All right, I'm going to put in the first command just to get everybody started. And let's take a moment and think about what that command might be, especially since it's given in the assignment description back in our unit folder. Okay, so here's the clue. It says, create a new table named student. So we know we're going to create a table named student, and the command for it, of course, is this. So I'm going to just get you started. This is student with a capital S. And then, because I know there's going to be multiple statements inside here, the other approach that you probably want to take, and some of this is a stylistic choice, mind you, I'm going to put in a set of parentheses and a semicolon at the end of the statement. What's going to go inside the set of parentheses? All the columns for the table that we're creating, all the data fields that are specified in the table that you see right here on the screen. So you got to make sure that you put in the column name, put in the data type, whether or not it's a key or primary key or accepts null values. And in some cases, you may also need to indicate that it's unique or not, although I want you to remember that if it's a primary key, by default, it is unique. So you don't have to include that keyword. So what I'm going to do for you is I'll do the first one, and then I'll let you guys work on the subsequent ones. So here's student ID. I'm grabbing it right from the table. I'm going to put in a tab to create some neater looking columns. And this is going to be an integer. And then another tab where I'm going to say not null and primary key. Because there's going to be multiple statements like this, I'm putting in a comma at the end of the line. And that's your basic format, folks. So I'm going to pause the video again and give you a couple of minutes to do a couple of these, and then we'll come back and look at the solution. So now that a few minutes have elapsed, and hopefully everybody has gotten to the point where they're done or close to done or well in progress, I'm going to start pasting in the remainder of the code. I'm going to start one line at a time. And so the next line that I have is this. So once again, I'm just looking at the table I have here. So I'm just taking the name exactly as listed. They're telling me the data type and the size and the other settings. Okay. First name will be very much the same. And you see what I'm doing here. I'm also putting in tab stops to kind of make this all look a little cleaner. And so that stuff, falls into columns, sort of. I think it's a little easier to read. So that's first name. Why would they make the last name field longer than the first name?
Hyphenated names.
Yeah, hyphenated names is a big one. Which is more important, last name or first name? It depends. Is always right? And in the old days, the family name was very important. All right, with the rest of these, I'm going to start just kind of block pasting them here. So we have city, state, and zip. And we did have a little discussion, I think outside the video, if I'm not mistaken, about why are they putting the word student in front of all of these column names, right? We had that discussion a little bit. In terms of how do you refer to objects inside a database, you usually refer to the table name dot the column name. So in this case, we would say student ID. To me, that's a little confusing. But what we kind of came to as a conclusion is the fact that we don't know what else is going to be in this database. So maybe there's students, staff, instructors, and they all have their own similar fields, so you don't want to have the same demographic information repeating. If I were to maybe design this, I might truncate that. I might maybe just do ST or something like that. But that's very subjective. Remember, the modern approach to databases is to be more verbose than you need to be, not less. And I think that's a wise approach, because then you're never guessing. Right, so that takes care of address, city, state, and zip. We still have phone and date of birth, and those are also pretty simple fields. The date of birth is not allowed to be null, and I also should not have, because I already have those closing items there. So this is what it should look like when you're done, and if you're a format freak, which I can be sometimes, if you want it to look all nice, your columns should hopefully look something like that. Is this what you guys have? Okay. Any difficulties with this? Seems like you guys have your heads wrapped around it pretty well. All right, so that being the case, now that you have it written, please go ahead and make sure you execute the command. And then what I would also recommend is that you go over here to your database structure and actually take a look and see if the table did appear. I think that's pretty important. All right, let's go ahead and then take this code and paste it into your document. Now, I'll get some people when they turn these in, and frankly, folks, this is not really an obligation, that will also give me a screenshot to show me that it worked. I can usually tell by just glancing at the code pretty quickly if it worked or not, but it doesn't hurt to throw a screenshot into. No problem there if you want to do it. All right, the next exercise is to create another table called department. And I think at this point this should be pretty easy. There's only 2 columns and 2 fields. So what I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to come in here and change this to department. And then I'm just going to get rid of everything that's in between the parentheses here. So from what I'm seeing, we have 2 columns to create. This should be pretty simple. So we're going to have department ID. That's going to be an int. Nulls are not allowed. And a primary key, which automatically means that it's a unique value. One other column to create, and that's department name. And this one's going to be a varchar size 30 and not null. Make sure you spell it right. Then go ahead and give it an execute once you're all set. And then let's do a refresh over here in the Object Explorer and go hunting for a new table. Not that I'm paranoid, but it doesn't hurt to check. But there it is. All right, if you've completed that command, go ahead and paste it in to your document. You notice how the tab stops moving from a coding engine over to basically a word processor. Don't quite follow. And I don't know if you guys are watching what I was doing on my screen. I try to add a tab stop to clean it up, and what happens? See how because this is a little box inside of Microsoft Word, it tries to move you to the next box or field when you press tab. Don't worry about how it looks in this code window as long as the code is correct. Don't worry a lot about formatting. I do get some people that get a little weird about it, and I get it, and you want it to look as good as it can. All right, if you finish that one, we're going to move on to the third exercise now, which is to create a table named instructor. All right, so we got 5 fields there you have to create. So once again, I'm just going to alter what I have, and it doesn't make sense to create it fresh. And this is going to be called instructor. And then we're going to have a number of things that, well, this one I'm going to get rid of. But you know, this one is close enough to instructor ID that I can just type that in here. So let's do that. So that's 1 down and a few to go. So not null and a primary key. I'm going to add the next one. The next one is instructor last name. This will be a var car of 40. And null values are not allowed. Got to have a last name apparently. Putting a comma at the end of the line. Now I'm going to move on to the next line. So that was last name. This next line should be really similar, so let's just copy paste it. I'm going to change the column name to first name, and then we're going to shorten its length to 20. That also is not allowed to be null. Next we have instructor phone. This is a varchar of 12. Did we discuss why 12? I thought phone numbers had 10 digits. Dashes, right? Some people will set it even higher than that. Some people will use the approach, and this is, mind you, this is just a little note here. Some people will put phone numbers in like this, right? And then, in which case, you need 1, you need the space, you need the parentheses. So how many do you need altogether? That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14. Some people will put the phone numbers in like this, or all sorts of weird combinations. My caution to most people is that when you're doing that, because you can't predict how people are going to type it in, accommodate for whatever you think the max is going to be. Could you see any reason why it would functionally even go higher than that? International. And what does an international phone number look like? Yeah, there's a 3-digit code and a plus sign that goes at the beginning. So if, like, for example, if you were calling the United States from outside the United States, this is actually the phone number you call. Did you guys know that? Yeah. Isn't it great that the country code, we have 1, really easy to remember, because we're the first ones to have it. That's why, you know. If somebody else invented the technology, they would be number 1. But every country has its own 3-digit code. And chances are you would never memorize those. But if you're really dealing with an international environment, that is a consideration that you, in my mind, that you should think about, because now if you count this out, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. You want to even complicate it further? What about if they have an extension number? Right? So some people will take it up as high as like 20. Right? There's all sorts of little rules. Now, another little feature of databases, and we haven't really talked about this, and those of you that work with programs like Access or Excel, and have worked with phone number information, you know that there's also this thing we call an input mask that you can place on top that doesn't capture anything aside from just the numbers, and then puts it into the parentheses and the dashes for you. And both approaches are completely valid. I always thought the safer way to do it is just have it be text and let the people type it in however they want, and then not limit it. Because the chances are if you're using a dialing program based on this, it doesn't really matter too much. Apparently that's allowed to be null. So I guess you're allowed to not have a phone as an instructor. Sounds like my kind of school. I'll never have to be called, right? Instructor department ID, that's going to be an int, and not null. There's an extra little tidbit in here. How do we handle this? And I don't know how much we talked about this, but it says not null, and it references department ID. Now I already typed in the not null. So what the heck does it mean? References department ID. What does that mean to us?
Foreign key.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the response.
Foreign key.
It's a foreign. Is it a foreign key though? I'm not saying yes or no. It's like how I'm not strategically not answering it.
It's reference to whatever the data that takes the data between things.
Right. Well, and really, what this is doing is it's just saying this: in order for you to put a department ID in here, it has to be one that's an actual department ID. You can't just type in a 3-digit number. It has to be one of the IDs from department IDs. Remember we were talking about why do you put the prefix in front? Now, granted, I could have just called the ID field in the department table ID, but now I'm pretty clear that it's the department ID that we're syncing with. So that's why the verbose is always better. So now how do you do that in code? You should really say references, and then you put in the syntax just as it's shown in that table. Department, in parentheses, department ID, and so that basically links us to that table now. And these are on separate lines, right? Does it seem like Visual Studio, or excuse me, SQL Server doesn't like that? This certainly doesn't like this.
You don't like to call it a foreign key?
Yeah, so you're asking the right question. You don't have to call it a foreign key. This is telling me it's referencing an invalid table. That's even worse. Do we trust that? I don't trust that.
No.
I'm gonna be, me seeing it underlining right now is telling me that I think there's a problem, because this command should work just fine. However, it's saying foreign key, blah, 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 references invalid table department. Now, I'm looking at a table right here called department. So why would it say it's invalid? In fact, let's take a look at the columns here to make sure these are okay, because I already know what the problem is. See, I have this tendency to sometimes lead my people astray on purpose to see if you're catching it. What is wrong with what I did? Okay, so this is where the fine-tooth comb comes out. I'm missing a letter. Look, see where my cursor is flashing right now? Now it should fix. Still have the red underline? All right, so now I'm checking the spelling of everything, right? Department ID, It should be okay. All right, so this is hopefully bring a little bit of clarity to this, I hope. I did just run this, and it said command completed successfully. Of course, I don't see the table here yet, but of course, if I hit my refresh, it should hypothetically create the table. And see, I'm hoping, but I'm still not seeing. Let's just refresh that database. Now let's check the tables. And there it is. If I look at the columns here, I want you to take a look. Look at where my cursor is pointing right now. What does that indicate, F key? It's the same way. It's another way to do a foreign key.
Okay.
So could I have just said foreign key? Yes. In fact, it seems that SQL Server Management Studio actually preferred that we did that, so it's flagging me in red, but because it does accept various SQL syntaxes, it worked just fine. Ultimately, the result of it is that it is a foreign key, because really that is the definition of a foreign key. So I can put something in here, and in fact I must, I can't leave it null, as long as it's valid inside this other table. How would I have indicated a foreign key? Could I just change this to foreign key? Could I have just simply typed foreign key? Well, it doesn't seem to like that syntax either, does it? In fact, it would use a completely different type of syntax, right? And I'm not really worried about changing to that syntax right now, because that's not really the point of what we're doing. We're just trying to get the tables built. You've got to spell the keywords correctly too. That helps. But it did functionally operate, and that was really what was important. Now we don't have any more tables to build. The next step is to get data into the tables, and that's going to be another one of those things. I'd like you to try to do the first one on your own, and this is going to leverage the next command on our list, which is insert into, and then it's a matter of getting the syntax right for it. So once again, I'm going to get you started. I'm going to start with the first command. Now I'm going lowercase. Is that okay? We've talked about this. Yeah. Real SQL people would yell at me right now. And we're going to put this into which table? The department table. So I'm just going to say insert into department. And then you need to put in some data. In fact, you're given the data that you should insert. Now, your challenge is to try to remember the syntax for doing it. So I'm going to pause the video for a few moments and let you have at it. You know, the one thing that you should all keep in mind as you're doing these inserts is this. Sometimes it is important to know the structure of the table that you're dealing with. And what I mean by that is this. If you're looking at the department table and adding information to it, it helps to be able to look at the columns, and first of all, know how many columns there are and what order they're listed in. So in our case, we're going to be dropping values into this table in the form of just the data, right? We're not building an application to do it. We're kind of doing it brute force on the SQL level. And so here's the basic technique. The first thing you want to think about is, do we need to actually declare the columns that we're going into? In some cases, yes. So for example, if your columns are listed as, let's say, last name, first name, address, but the information that you have is first name, last name, address, you could actually designate what columns it's going into prior to actually just dropping the values in. That's not something we necessarily need to do, since we already have the information, and you know what, it happens to be in the same layout as what we need to insert it into it with. So department ID is first and department name is second, and if I just follow that pattern, I should be able to do this. So watch what I do here. The way that I prefer to do this is I usually put this command, values, below the insert into. You can put it all in one line if you want, but that's my preference. And from there, inside of sets of parentheses, plural, so notice that I'm going to do this more than once, I'm going to put in as follows. So I'm going to put in the value that they want. So the first value is what? 1? Now I could just type 1. All right, so we got to probably talk about this a little bit. I could just type in 1 and be done with it. But knowing that how most schools operate, they tend to have lots of departments, right? So I might actually encourage you to do something like 001. Who's to say that the zeros, maybe they'll drop off or not, but I think of like even the web program that you're in or the data analytics program that you're in here will have either a 152 or a 156 prefix, and that's really kind of what we're putting in. So they gave us the numbers 1, so I'm just going to go with that. I'm going to separate the values by a comma. The next field takes characters up to 30, and it can't be null. So the first department name is Business Information Tech. And I can just type that in, right? Business. No, it's a string, right? So it better go inside either single or double quotes. And I'm going to spell the whole thing out. That's what I'm going to do. Just like that. Is that a problem? Well, you know what? It could be, because notice that this field was set up to only accept 30 characters. Where am I at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I got one character too many. And this is exactly the type of thing that can happen in the real world, right? Some database person thought 30 was enough, and the reality is it's not. So why did they abbreviate here? That's why. So we're going to match what they have in the table. So we're going to say Business Information Tech, and that will fit. And then I'm going to close that with a parenthesis and a single quote first, and then a comma, because now I'm going to go to the next set of values. Next set of values is going to be 002, and then inside of quotes, marketing, there's fits. Then we're going to do 003, and this is going to be accounting. Now I'm noticing that all of these are uppercase, and here I am doing it mixed case. Oh well. Used to see in the past quite a bit where people always try to do stuff uppercase. Does anybody know why the post office for a long time, if you ever had a printed out label, had to all be all caps? Did you guys know that? Did you ever encounter that? Because their OCR software that would route, that would do all the address routing, could only read uppercase. Yeah, and now, you know, it's kind of fascinating, but their equipment now doesn't really care so much. And then if anything can't be read, what happens? Humans do it. Actual people do it. Yeah. So you write out those Christmas cards by hand in cursive, you know, chances are a human being is routing that one directly. No, that's what happens after you have to do that for 30 years. That's where that comes from. All right. And so this is all it takes to insert into. Now it is predicated on the fact that the information is going in the order in which the table was structured. Right? And since we're just brute force adding the information, that's a fine way to proceed. Now, given that, the next couple of exercises should be pretty simple. I'm going to go ahead and execute this. It says 5 rows affected. So now I assume the values are in there. So I'm going to take that code and drop it into the document. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do the same step for the instructor table, and here's some information for that. So it's the same technique, folks. How do you check to see, by the way, if the values made it? Select star from department. Anything else we need to do? Still underlining for me. Invalid object name. Isn't that interesting? Not sure why. I know it'll work. And there it is. But notice that we did get the information in there correctly. So that's how you double check your work. So let's move on to instructor now. Same technique. And I'm just typing that in there so I don't forget. And then the command is insert into instructor. And if you want to put it up here, you could do it that way. And then just put in your data. Now, what I would recommend, so you don't forget your order, even though it's kind of given to you here in the document, is to look at the structure of your table and make sure you're putting that information in the right way. One that often gets people is that last name, first name thing when they get superimposed. Sometimes people like to see the output in the other fashion, so sometimes switch them. But we're going to go ID, last name, first name, phone, and department. Remember, the department here has got a foreign key, so it's got to match up with the numbers. Now, the other interesting thing is that output that we just got, even though I typed in leading zeros, you notice how I got rid of them? Yeah, that's pretty common. Why did it do that? Because we told it was an integer. Valid integers, if it's 11, you never put a 0 in front of it. If it was important that the zeros appeared in front, what would I have to do? I have to change the data type to be a character format. Would that break anything? Not necessarily. And in fact, a lot of schools do it that way, just so they have more flexibility. So let me build the first one here for you. It does. That's spot on. It does take longer to query characters than it does numbers, so the numbers would actually operate more efficiently. So if we were building a huge database, we would think about that. The other thing that I would recommend here is how long are our ID numbers going to be? Well, we really don't know. So one approach to like putting in this ID number 432 is some people might just say 432, which, you know, frankly, that's fine. Some might also do this, you know, depending on how many characters they expect their ID numbers to be. And if you notice, we do have one that's a little larger. I'm actually just going to type in the number itself. frankly, it doesn't really matter too much. And the next value is going to be the person's name, Smith. You got to comma separate all these things, folks. Remember that. Bob. Do I really have to type out that phone number? I guess I do. So this is the busy work aspect of it. Did I do anything wrong there? Well, notice because here the phone number is actually characters, I do have to put single quotes around it. Otherwise, it's going to throw an error. And then finally, we have to put in the department number, and it looks like Bob Smith is part of Information Technology and Business. And then I'm going to close the paren and put in a comma. And then you're just going to continue with the rest of the data. Now, the rest of this is pretty much a mechanical process. If you got this one right, all you really have to do is just repeat it over and over again. And now I'm not going to come out there and type it for you, but here's the rest of the output. Yes, this is copied from my solution file because I'm a little lazy on the typing today. And you can see in my solution file here, we also decided to put in the leading zeros. So I guess I'm going to follow suit. And I see, some of the formatting is a little sloppy here, but considering it's a copy paste, not too bad. Like I would probably do that to it just to make it look a little cleaner, and I probably wouldn't do it all caps. I am going to go ahead and run the query. And now I'm getting the, I see what I did wrong here. Let's try that again. All right, this time it worked. And then of course, if I want to check this, I can do in fact, I'll do it in a new query window, as I'm just going to do a select statement. So let's say use advanced database. Gotta spell it right though. And then I'm just going to do this simple select statement and run it. And then you see we have the same output that's listed here. Right. Here's the completed query. So hopefully you have it just like that or similar. And then, of course, the output. Where did I do that? I guess I did it right there. And then you can see how it matches up. But you saw what happened, and this is exactly the kind of stuff I do, is intentionally put in something wrong just to see it break. Because if you're always doing it right and it never breaks, then it breaks and you don't know what the heck to do. So sometimes it's kind of good to break it to see what happens. And what I did is basically kind of mess with that a little bit. And if you want to have a little bit of fun with this, right? Of course, everybody wants to have fun with SQL. You can come up with, some alternate values to throw in. And I'm going to throw in like a weird department that I know doesn't exist, and then try to run this query. And then you can see how the foreign key is conflicting because there is no department 33. If I switch that to department 01 and try to run it again, now you're seeing that it worked, And if I go back to this query, and I run it again, the one that just pulls in all the records, you'll now see that extra name thrown in as well. Do you notice something interesting about the query though? Because I'm just pulling back all the data automatically. You notice that record number 8, or result number 8 here, is the one I just typed in. Why would that not appear below everything else if I added that last? Because clearly, when I do a select statement, it is sorting based upon the primary key. Right? It must be. Otherwise, 999 Tom Smith would have appeared at the bottom. So even though I've inserted data once, doesn't mean you can't insert data again. All right, so that's our completed command. Paste that in there. And if you want to see what it actually looks like, here it is. And now we're moving on to number 6. There's a lot of tasks to do in this homework assignment, so I'm glad we're kind of getting started on it in class. Everybody's okay so far? All right, let's move on to number 6, and we're going to insert all this student information. So I'm just going to come up here and change this to our student table. So I'm just going to say student. And once again, I'm just going to take that approach of looking at the column structure. You know, why not, right? It's right there. We can look at it, so let's do it. And so we're going to start with student ID, last name first, address, city, state, zip, phone, and date of birth. And we have a complete table of information here. It's too bad this is an image and you couldn't just like copy paste it, right? Yeah. Well, I guess somebody's got to type. I guess that somebody will be me. All right, so I'll do the first one for you. You know, and the truth is, even if I paste them all on the screen all at once, it's not like it's going to save you any typing. So now I'm putting this in a wider view here on purpose to show you that that really is all one line of code, and actually probably looks better that way if you can, you know, arrange it. And I don't know if this one actually is going to sit that way or not. There we go. Then if you want to add the rest, you can go ahead and do that. I'm just noticing that that carriage return was actually present in my source file, so it wasn't a mistake. Does it matter if it crosses lines? It really does not. Here's all the rest of the information. I'm going to go ahead and run this query. Looks like it worked. Then I'm going to come back here, and where I have my generic, you know, select statement here just to see what's in the table, I can run it, and then hopefully I see something that looks just like my document here, and it looks pretty darn close, if not exact. Here once again is the completed query. I'm just noticing that it takes a few seconds before it hits your screens out there, doesn't it? Now, if you're ready to, go ahead and move on to the next one. It's functionally not much different, right? No, actually, that was the last one that we're inserting in. Okay, never mind. Sorry.
You think we're very quick typists, don't you?
Well, you know what? Maybe I ought to take a break and stand up and walk around. I'll give you guys a few minutes. So we're going to work on the next exercise now, and that is to complete number 7, display only the column student ID, student last name, and student first name, and order them by student last name from the student table. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here to SQL Server, and I'm going to go ahead and delete all the stuff that I have here. I'm also going to narrow up my window so I can look at my instructions at the same time. And then start thinking about how we do this. Now, we're going back to the beginning in a sense in terms of what types of queries we're doing. So we're going to do a select statement. I'm going to get in the habit of typing lowercase here actually, just to show you that it works just fine. And we need to select student ID, student last name, and student first name. And notice here how they have these in bold. You guys catching this? And as we display these columns, this is kind of a hint. So this is really part of the process here. We are going to select student ID, but we're going to have it display as student with a space ID. And that's really what's implied by what they're saying here, if you're not picking up on that. So the reason I'm doing it the way I'm doing it is so that I get an output that is intended. The next one is student last name, which will display as student last name. And then finally, we're going to do student first name, displaying as student first name with spaces. All right. Now that's enough to designate which columns we're pulling from and how the column headers in the output are going to display. You guys are catching on to that, right? All right. Our next step is to tell it what table we're choosing this from, because we haven't specified that at all yet. And for that, I'm going to go to the next line, and I'm going to say from student. So now all the underlines that I have above, basically what it's telling me is it's not finding it. Let me just show you a little trick, and let me see if my theory is right. I'm going to do something really radical. I'm going to cut all that, and I'm just going to run this statement to execute, which is just a use statement. I'm going to paste that back in. Still highlighting. Why? Well, you know what? Let's figure out. It says invalid column name, student ID, but I'm looking right at it. It seems pretty valid to me. I am? Yeah, for whatever reason, it's not finding all of it, and I'm not really sure what the functional reason for that is.
Is that the correct name? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it is all the correct name. So I'm not really sure why it's flagging like that, but at the same time, I'm not worried about it. Normally, I would run the use command; it would take care of that. But I have a high degree of comfort that the stuff that I'm typing is correct, because I'm pulling it from the answer sheet, right? So I know it's correct. And I'm going to just cap off the query by saying we're ordering by what? Student last name. And see, you guys notice now the IntelliSense is picking it up? Isn't that interesting? And you notice what it did? It put that in square brackets. Interesting. It's not what's in my instruction sheet here. Now if I put square brackets around these, would that fix this too? So we're going to Control Z that. Now this is the complete statement. So we're going to select these fields as indicated. We're going to output them the way that they're indicated, and we're going to order by the student last name column. Let's go ahead and execute this, and we'll see the output. All right, so part of the instructions are that you are being asked to give your command. And if you wanted, you could alternately also include all the data if you wanted, or the output. I think it's probably best when you frankly output this or grab it as an image and then paste it in if you want to do that. You're not really being given what the correct output is, so you really don't know if it's correct. So how do you figure out if it's correct? Well, you would have to look at a complete query for one thing. So if I select everything from student and display it, I do see that there's only 5 records. And are we coming up with 5 records here? We are. Are we correctly ordering by student last name? We are. All right. So really what we're looking for is the completed query and not anything else. Now, I don't know if you guys recall this, but when we were doing this earlier in the semester, we were throwing in as a keyword. And I didn't hear one of you mention, shouldn't we say as? Or were you thinking that in the back of your head? That's fine. Would it work like this too? Yes. In fact, you might feel more comfortable that way, and that's okay to include it. So if you would rather write the query with the as keyword in there, that's absolutely fine. Just go ahead and do it. It'll still work the same. And, here's the proof. I'll hit the execute button. Still gives you the same result. It also shows that that keyword can be omitted, that it's implied. All right, let's move on to the next exercise. That was exercise number 7. Now we're moving on to exercise number 8. This one says display only the columns instructor ID, last name, first name, department, and then order by department ID from the instructor table. So this is not going to be that much different. In fact, we can probably come in here and just tweak some of these. And in fact, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to first say, instructor ID. And we are coming from the table instructor. I'm not worried about this quite yet. But we have the first one done, and then we're going to say instructor last name. And you might find it actually better, and this is just an observation now, to type these from scratch. And the why is because then the IntelliSense might kick in and help you complete these. And some people do opt for that approach. So just as like kind of a proof of that, let's just pretend I finished doing this. See, it's like not liking that it's all on a separate line, but oh well. I'm going to put in a comma here. And the next field is instructor first name, so I'm just going to type that. You see that IntelliSense is just not helping me out today, so. And we're doing department ID. Frankly, I think some of these column headers are getting a little verbose, but this is what we're asked to do, so we're just going to follow it. And then I think that's all of it. Then we're going to order by. All right, and it looks like we have everything in there correctly. This is what my query is looking like. I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And it looks like I have a typo. Same thing I did before, no T. Let's try it again. All right, now we have our output. Are we ordered by department ID? We sure are. We have the 4 columns that were asked for, changed into nicer looking strings than what originally was put there. All right, so then you can go ahead and can grab this code here, paste it into number 8. Same thing with department table. So we're going to grab department ID and department name, order them by department name from the department table. So not going to be a lot of stuff to change here. I'm just going to go ahead and start doing it. I'm going to put in the table name first. I'm hoping that solves some of the IntelliSense problems, but it doesn't seem to be helping at all today for whatever reason. So we're going to choose both the columns that are in this table, department ID. So we can select you see I'm altering the directives a little bit. I hope you guys are okay with that. And then we're going to order by department, department name. That should do it. And is it ordering by department name correctly? It sure is. We'll go ahead and drop that code into number 9. All right, as we move on to number 10 now, we have a little bit of a different task. It actually asks us to modify the student record for student ID 123 to have a phone number of whatever. So do we need to know the student's name? No, not at all. That's one of the beauties of a database. Now, does that mean we shouldn't look at the student records? I just happen to have them handily up here. So student ID 123 is Tom Jones. And we're going to change his phone number to something else. So that way I can just come back here, run this query again, and make sure that it worked. But I'm going to work over in this query window right now. So what's the command that we're going to use to make that happen? Update. So I'm going to type update. Why is it pink? Because that's what it does. Normally we type the keyword and it turns blue, right? But the update command actually goes pink. Okay, so there's nothing wrong. So we're going to update student. And we're going to use this command called set. And we're just going to say student, you gotta spell it right though, student phone. And see, I can see the field names right here, so this is why that's handy. And we're going to set that so it's equal to the string, because that's what the phone number actually is, 414-888-1234. Is there anything else we need to do? Very good, Keaton. So you do need a where statement in there so you know who you're doing it to. You don't want it to happen to anybody. It's got to be for whoever's got the student ID, which is equal to 1, 2, 3. This is all it takes to operate this. In fact, I'll put a semicolon at the end, not really functionally necessary at this point, but I'm going to go ahead and execute this. And it says 1 row affected. Now I can trust that it did it, right? So my one inclination might be to go back here and run this query again so I can look at Tom Jones and indeed see that he has a new phone number now. See that? But there's another little trick that you can use, and this is one that maybe you read about, maybe not, where you can also throw an output statement into your query so you can see the result. And watch the syntax of this. And, you know, I might even throw a comment in here. I'll say optional to display results. Like so. So you guys can tell that, you know, you can do a dash dash and that turns it into a comment. That's one way to comment inside of SQL. So I'm going to go ahead and run this query now. So where's the output? Yeah, that didn't work exactly how I intended. Normally I thought that would show me the results here, but it's not. So if you want to get rid of that line, that's fine. So I'm going to get rid of it. I know it already worked, and I'm wondering if maybe what happened really was that because it was already changed, it didn't do anything. So let's grab a different ID number. Let's change Sam's phone number. His ID is 153. So I'm going to have to change one number here. And you know what? Let me get that output statement back in there first. And then let's change that to 153 and go ahead and run it. And now notice, folks, that it's displaying the number that was deleted. See that down here? Very exciting stuff. So the previous example, because we had already changed it, wouldn't display as a result. That's just a handy little tip. So if you want to throw this code in here into your document, go for it. Looks like we'll have maybe time for one more. So we'll go on to number 11, and it says display only the student record for student ID 123 to verify the phone number. Okay, we were just kind of doing that, right? But it only wants us to display that particular student, right? Could I modify this simple select statement I have here to show that? And what would I add to it? Right, where student ID equals, and we're checking 1, 2, 3. Right, so that's as simple as that to show the complete record now. So that's a really pretty simple one, and it seems like you guys are pretty on it. So looking at the clock, I'm trying to get as much of this done for you guys as possible. So let's go ahead and try number 12 too. I thought we wouldn't have enough time, but evidently we're going to squeeze it in. So it says modify the student record or records for students who have the zip code of 53227 to have the city name of Cudahy. All right, well that's a little bit different type of thing. This is going to be an update command again. We are going to update the student table, except we're going to set the student city to be equivalent to Cudahy. And you know what, we'll leave this output statement in here too, because this will show us what's being deleted. And we also need to check, well, we're doing this off a zip code this time, right? So we're going to check the condition to be zip code 53227. 227. Let's go ahead and run it. And you'll see that the deleted information said Milwaukee. So now if I come back up here and change this query to say Cudahy, you can see who those people are. And they do have a zip of 53227, and indeed all of them do say Cudahy now because we just changed it, right? It said Milwaukee before, so here's the completed code for these. So the first, I'm not sure what I just did. Looks like it hid my code. Oh, there we go. All right, it was still there. I just scrolled it off the screen. All right, so here's the answer for the number 12. And then functionally we kind of did this one. So we got number 12 and 13 done as well. There's not much left here, folks. It's just a few more exercises that are really, frankly, just as simple as what we're doing. It's just going to take a little bit of effort on your part to figure it out. Feel free to communicate with each other and help each other out if you want. But we are out of time officially here, and I do have another obligation I need to attend to. So we are done for the day, and hopefully that helped